Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Pivot in Progress. I'm Sahiti. I lead strategy and ops at Pivot, and with me I have Arjun Prakash, the founder and CEO of Pivot. Welcome to
Everyone.
another. Hi, welcome to another episode, Arjun. Here in this episode, we are actually unpacking um, more about resumes and cold messages and how we can actually make them differentiated and stand out in a pool of very similar resumes. Um, Let me give you a little bit of an overview of this podcast series. Pivot and Progress is a podcast series where we aim to actually talk about every stage of career that professionals actually go through and the different challenges that they go through. With each episode, we have experts who join us and we talk about everything right from job applications to career growth and beyond. And with us today, we have Arjun, whom I just introduced. But Arjun is going to talk us through the different nuances of writing better resumes and cold messages that can actually stand out in a sea of applications. Now, what has been the problem these days is that a lot of us have been encountering the same actually, which is that our job applications go out, but we never hear anything back about them. We never get replies back. So job interviews are much lesser than before. So the job application to job interview conversion is very low, and that is kind of exacerbated by the use of AI tools that everyone now has access to. So AI tools are making every application, every resume, and every cold message outreach look very similar. So how do you kind of differentiate in this pool of very similar resumes, very similar sounding resumes, is what we'll talk about in this podcast, in this episode, in the next 1 hour. I think we are good to get started, Arjun. Is there anything you would like to mention more about this topic?
Yeah, no, I think that was a great start, Sahiti. Thanks for sharing the context. I do want to just, maybe take a second to sort of echo on the thoughts that you shared about the big problem in the job market with regard to, getting shortlisted for interviews. I think that is something
Yeah,
that we have been seeing as an exacerbating problem over the last almost 3 years since COVID happened. Um, One of the main reasons I think this is happening, apart from the problems you highlighted, is the fact that earlier you used to have on average about 2 to 300 applicants on average for each opening.
yeah,
Today, that has jumped to about 500 on average. That's what we have identified. And across levels, right? It's not just for junior level
yeah,
roles, but even mid to senior level roles, we are seeing similar numbers, especially if a company has a good brand name, good presence, and is well known. That number can even reach up to 1,000, right? So when you're in a job market like this, you have to realize that some of the things that were working earlier when there were
yeah,
fewer candidates are not necessarily going to be impactful today to
yeah,
help you land your target role. It's just going to take much more time because, I mean, just from a first principle thinking standpoint, if earlier you had 1 out of 200 probability, right, which is 0.5%, today that has decreased to 1 out of 400 or 1 out of 500. So it's basically halved, or become a third of what it
yeah,
used to be. So you have to keep these numbers in mind when you're applying in the job market today, and that's why resumes and cold messages or outreach and networking that you do has become that much more important to differentiate from others, right? Because when you're in a crowded market, the biggest uh, potential problem is that you start to look and sound very similar to other
yeah,
candidates, even though you might be a good fit, right? So, for example, even at Pivot, we have hired new professionals over the last couple of months, and for some of the openings that we posted, we got like more than 500 applicants within 24 hours or 48 hours, right? And genuinely speaking, even sometimes when I have had to go through some of these applications myself, there are so many potential candidates that seem good on paper
yeah,
because many people are using AI, and you can tell that a lot of them
yeah,
are using AI.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it comes back to the problem then you were highlighting, which is AI can help. We are not saying refrain from AI and
Yeah.
don't use it, but use it judiciously, and don't use it as a substitute for your own authenticity, your own voice, where you highlight your key experiences and achievements in the
Yeah.
most personalized way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
So
think I just want to sort of share that at the get go, and then let's dive deep into the the factors that help make resumes a success today.
yeah, yeah. Let's actually get into that. I think it'll be great to have a breakdown of what are the different factors that can actually be worked upon by an individual to make whatever they have right now stand out a little bit more in terms of their resume, content, different factors. Why don't we go through each of them?
Yeah. So I think the first question we get a lot of times when people come to us is, hey, I'm applying to a lot of jobs,
Yeah,
and I'm even customizing my resume, but I think it's not getting shortlisted because of ATS. Okay.
yeah,
Now, for the uninitiated who might not know, I think everybody knows now. I feel like so many
yeah,
people have self-educated themselves, but there might still be some people who don't. So for them, ATS is applicant tracking software or applicant tracking system, which is used by most mid to large size organizations and some smaller organizations as well to manage their hiring process, right?
yeah,
Is just something that helps them keep track of all the applications in a structured way and automates a lot of the hiring where the initial pool of candidates that the opening has received is reviewed and shortlisted not by necessarily a human but this software or this system. So let's kind of, demystify what this ATS is very quickly. Again, I know
right,
people have done their research on this, but I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and myths around ATS as well. Because a lot of times when people come to us, they say that ATS is the issue. And when we look at their resume, actually, ATS is not the issue many a times.
mm,
So I'll say why that's the case. See, ATS is typically what it's trying to do is parse your resume to see firstly, can it identify what your experience has been? So,
yeah,
that's a most fundamental requirement that your resume should be clear enough, clean enough, formatted in the right way so that ATS bots can actually parse through it properly.
yeah,
What does that mean? That means if you have too many columns, too many different layout sections, if you have multiple colors, different types of fonts, or sometimes even too small a font for
yeah,
something, anything which makes it more complex from a formatting standpoint or a
yeah,
readability standpoint, that comes in the way of ATS, right? So that's point one of ATS. Second point of ATS is keyword alignment. So once the ATS is able to parse through and read through your resume, you want to make sure that is actually, it's going to rank you high amongst the pool of candidates. And the way it would do that is if it sees decent alignment, doesn't necessarily mean you need to copy each and everything in the job description, because that will actually backfire. Companies will know that you're just uh, doing keyword
yeah,
stuffing, right?
yeah,
So you need to judiciously align and customize your resume to the keywords that are included in the JD, um, so that ATS can see that there is decent alignment and shortlist you accordingly. If there is very limited alignment, um, or you think like you're applying to a role where you just can't align well because you don't have that experience, then chances are that ATS is not going to shortlist you, right? No matter what.
yeah,
So I think this is the second thing. And the third thing that ATS is just looking for is overall impact and achievement that you have created in your role. But it doesn't do that very well because it's a mechanical tool. It's not like a human necessarily.
yeah,
So a lot of times the impact or achievement is defined by the recruiter behind the scenes, right? When they are creating the ATS bot. So this is I would say this is sort of the misunderstanding a lot of people have, that ATS is not a self-service AI tool. It doesn't create its own rules. There's a human in the background, whether a hiring manager, recruitment team, or somebody else who's
right,
creating the rules for that
right,
ATS. So you have to ultimately appease the human behind the
Yeah.
scenes, right? And so you have to probably either guess or know like what kind of factors would create a perception of a successful candidate for the recruiters and hiring managers. So sometimes they will have very black and white things, like they will say this person should have at least 10 years of experience. So if you
Yeah.
don't have, you'll automatically get rejected,
Right.
right? Sometimes they'll say this person should have this specific industry experience or worked at these specific companies, right? So if you don't align with that, they will automatically reject you. But sometimes it can be a bit subjective also, right? Because they might say that, okay, we need that for a sales professional, they should have managed at least 100 crores book of business or something like that, right? So we don't know whether it's 100 crores, 200 crores. We won't necessarily know that because that's a behind the scenes sort of a rule created by a human.
Right.
So yeah, this is the first thing which I believe has a pretty significant impact on getting shortlisted for interviews.
Right.
um, yeah, go ahead, Saiti. I think
So
I'd
I
love to
think,
know like your thoughts on that as well.
yeah, so I think I'll just summarize it for anyone who's joined us a little later. We're actually talking about how one can work on their resumes to make it look very differentiated in order to bring out their authentic story and their authentic achievements. I think the first thing is to have a very readable and ATS readable format. Like make it your industry compliant format. Keep the colors to a minimal, you know, to a minimal extent. Have uniform fonts, readable font sizes, and maybe have the column formats according to what your industry actually
Yeah, I
requires.
would say typically a single column format
Think
works
typically
best.
is, yes, yeah,
Yeah, at most you should have two columns, definitely
yeah,
not more than that. And even in two columns, right, I would say try not to have too many like actual divider lines because those
right,
divider lines can actually cause a lot of issues since the
right.
ATS cannot read them.
That's actually helpful. I think a lot because there are so many AI resume generating tools. There can be
Yeah.
so many different formats. So it's always important to know which format will actually get your resume through the ATS. Now, the second thing that we talked about is showcase your alignment to the role. Um, Basically, make sure the content is aligned. The third thing we talked about was showcase your impact, because that impact is something that a human is going to actually, along with ATS, a human might be filtering your resume. So make sure your impact is also shown relevant to the role that you're applying to. Um, Arjun, what else do they can they actually work on apart from the format and the content? Small
Yeah.
factors.
Yeah, I think format and template is important. So, I'm glad that we covered that part. There are certain other things with regard to that, but I think as long as you keep things simple and
Yeah.
not overcomplicate, generally it works well. And we'll go through some of the templates that we have used successfully with many of our candidates as well, so people can get an idea. The other thing that I would say, which is probably one of the most important things in a resume, is your headline. Yeah. So, your headline or your professional summary up top is the first thing that most recruiters or hiring
Yeah.
managers would go through, right? Because it's right at the top. So, it's just natural for our eyes to, get a hold of whatever you've written up there. But they will glance through it. They are not going to spend more than, I would say, 3 to 4 seconds literally
Yeah.
trying to see if you have highlighted certain key experiences, key achievements, or key pedigrees, right? Like meaning from a company or a university or education standpoint, which really just separates you from the rest of the candidate pool. I think a lot of times what we have seen is people don't really uh, make the best use of professional summary. They just talk in a very generic and summarized way about what they have done. So let's take an example. Let's say if we're talking about an engineer, right? A lot of times engineers just say that these are the languages, programming languages or tech stacks that I have worked with, and I have created XYZ product. Like I might have worked on creating fintech dashboards or something like that,
Yeah.
right? That's fine. You may have worked in fintech. You might have experience with, let's say, Python or MERN stack or whatever it is. That's fine. But that's not enough to differentiate you.
Yeah.
There are going to be at least 100 other candidates who will say something similar
Yeah.
as so to make an impact, I think it's better if you highlight what tech stacks you have not just used, but you really mastered in, and showcase how you have mastered that, meaning how you are better than the rest of the engineers. And that could mean, like, for example, you have by highlighting your achievements in the quality of the code that you have produced, meaning it requires less refactoring, or it's more scalable as the company grows. It's more reusable. There are fewer errors, and the QA process is cut down because of the way you write code. So whatever it is, if you can showcase that you have built code which is superior to other
Yeah.
candidates, that is a better thing to highlight rather than just saying I know these languages.
Yeah.
So this kind of phenomenon applies across different roles, whether it's a marketer, sales professional, finance professional, across the board, right? You don't have to highlight 10 achievements in the summary. I think even two or maximum three are good enough. They should just be strong enough, right? Compelling enough for
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
right? So
Completely
I think
agree.
that's definitely one of them. Yeah, go ahead. So I think.
No, no, please go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, I was just going to add that the next most obvious section is your work experience section.
Yeah.
Even though some people put their skill section above the work experience sections, but I personally think that recruiters are generally more interested in knowing where have you worked, right? It's just pure curiosity. Have you worked at a industry leader, or have you worked at a fast growing startup, or have you worked at a company which nobody really knows about, and it's not done well or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just human nature to to kind of develop confidence in a person based on what brands they're associated with.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you definitely want to focus on optimizing work experience section next. We'll talk in more detail about like how to optimize it, but a lot of times we have heard of the star format or the SAR format being the most well-known and effective format in kind of synthesizing your work experience in the most impactful manner.
Yeah.
So for those who don't know, STAR stands for situation, task, action, result. And SAR, which is a shorter abbreviation, is just basically situation, action, result. So it removes stars, because a lot of times you will see when you're writing a bullet that it becomes overly long if you focus on all the 4 points. So
Yeah.
sometimes you skip the task part. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you follow that format where in a situation you talk about, okay, I mean, let's take an example. You talk about uh, a marketing project that you had to do for a new product or a new job, right? So you should start with the situation, right?
Yeah.
Meaning, for example, entered the South India market, right? And then talk about the action. So you can say, for example, um, through an influencer campaign, with micro influencers having X to Y number of followers, and result, which means what you really achieved, right? So and drove, growth from zero to first 1,000 users
Yeah.
within a span of 1 week, right?
Yeah.
So something like this. I mean, this is a very basic example, but this is just to give people a structural idea of how
Yeah.
STAR or SAR approach works, right? I think generally, if you structure most of your bullet points in the work experience section like this, they make a lot of sense. And recruiters, hiring managers are also very used to kind of evaluating the impact of a candidate based on this. Frequently, what issues we see is people not sharing the results, right? People
Yeah.
not sharing any results.
Yeah.
So you don't have to put a quantifiable metric in each and every bullet, because people know you may not always be able to have visibility on the output or the outcome metric. That is
Yeah.
fine. But if you have not been able to impact anything in your role, right, no matter how junior or mid level or senior you are, if you've just done the work that you've been assigned, meaning you've been just fulfilling a responsibility without regard to the results or the outcomes, then that just feels like you don't really take ownership for anything, right? You're just being told what to do. You don't
Mm.
really drive outcomes. So
Yeah.
that is a little bit of a turn off for many people, right? Where they feel like, okay, if there's another candidate who's been able to actually drive results, we should shortlist them versus ones who have no idea what kind of output their work achieved.
Yeah.
Right? So that's an issue. The other thing is, we frequently see, I don't know why this is still an issue, because AI has been, there for about 3 4 years now, Gen AI tools. But a lot of times people are still not very articulate or uh, eloquent with the way they write. And I understand not everybody is a writer. Like, even when I think in the first role that I was in, I spent 7 years. So then when I had to create my resume after 7 years, I was very rusty, and it took me some time to kind of just get my brain working again, in that way. So
Hmm.
I get it, but now you have Gen AI, so you don't necessarily need to be the best writer in the world.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know if people sometimes just get lazy and not use Gen AI, or they think like whatever writing they have done is good enough. But we frequently see bullet points which are too complexly worded, or they're too long, or they're just too disjointed, and it's not really making sense, right? So I think that is surprisingly still a pretty big issue in many of the resumes that we see. And the last thing that I would say in terms of overall, resumes that really make an impact is, if you can highlight your achievements across the board, even in your, let's say, your education, or you call out a specific section, like a separate section, where you highlight your core achievements, and we'll show an example related to this particular thing. I think that's really helpful, because when you have a long work experience section,
Hmm.
sometimes the achievements get buried. And
Yeah.
if you have, let's say, 20 bullets in the section, there are 5 bullets carrying the achievements,
Yeah.
they might get skipped over. But if
Yeah.
you have a separate section which specifically says key achievements, I
Yeah.
think that can be very powerful. And sometimes people even put their achievements, in their internships, or in their MBA or university level. So it just shows a theme of being goal oriented when you
Yeah.
highlight your achievements.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, to actually make sure that your achievements also shine or stand out on your resume instead of being buried amongst the other details.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
So, Arjun, do you think we should look at some examples to give more context to people in terms of the, examples and specific things that we're actually talking about?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Let me share my screen. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
So one of the things, Saiti, as we focus a lot of our work with mid-career professionals. Not that we haven't worked with, early career or junior level professionals,
Yeah.
but I would say almost 60% to 65% of our clientele and our community is, focused on people that I would say about, 8 to 9 plus years experience, all the way till, um, I would say about 20 to 25 years experience.
Yeah.
So what examples we are going to see are going to be slightly more relevant for people at that level, like a mid-career level.
But I'm sure we can always emphasize on some overall themes that can also apply for any earlier career professional whoever is joining us. If they
Yeah.
have lesser amount of experience, I think we can still
Yeah,
we'll,
absolutely.
we'll at the end of it share some key points for them too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I hope everybody can see my screen now. Saiti, can you see it?
I can when I enter full screen. So I'm just trying to see. Can it be a little bigger, please, Arjun?
Let's see. I think I don't know if I have control over this.
Okay, I think this is fine. I think this we can still read.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll try and. So I think more than the reading part, right? Like that
Yeah.
is something that I will walk through, during this session. But this is more about like you being able to see the structure of this resume. And
Yeah.
I think, first thing that I want to call out, right, before we dive into each and every section, this is one of the examples. It's not the only one. So, don't think like this is the be all and end all format. There are other formats that might be also equally effective. And one thing that I do hear from people from time to time is that, some of this looks a bit old school, looks a little like dated. To be very honest, it might, maybe like the type of font that we have used or something like that. But the more important thing here is it's very simple, it's very clean, and it's very impactful from an ATS perspective,
Yeah.
right? It's so that's the part that we should focus on here. Um, I think this is the most in most resumes. This is the most common starting point, which is your name, your details. I think this is fairly straightforward. Sometimes people complicate this as well. They put like many other things over here. Like they'll put their photo, they'll put this that. You don't
Yeah.
need to do anything, right? Especially photos. Please don't put them because they can cause bias amongst recruiters. They anyways are not seeable or readable by ATS, so it's kind of like useless to put your
Yeah.
photo. If anything, it can work against you, not for you.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. Apart from that, keep it simple. Here, we do tell people to write their target job title, meaning like if you're applying to, let's say, two different type of jobs, right? And why might that happen if somebody asks? It's because sometimes there is overlap between two types of roles, like project management and program management, right? So if you're applying to, let's say, project management role, then call yourself a project manager here. If you're applying to program management role, then use that as the title here. It helps from a keyword alignment perspective, and it also just establishes you as the person who's who's the right fit for that particular role right away, right? So that's what we say here. Then you have the profile summary, right? We already talked a little bit about how to structure that. But again, 3 to 5 line snapshot that communicates the breadth and depth of your expertise. I think the quantifiable data is important here.
Yeah.
People shy away from doing that because they think, oh, it's going to come later in the work X section, or I don't have any quantifiable data. That's going to hurt you. Definitely going to hurt you in most
Yeah.
cases, right? So try and include at least 2 or 3 of your top achievements. Um, yeah, one thing is, like I said, people are sometimes too broad and generic, right? So you want to steer away from that, because if you are broad in the current job market where there are 500 average applicants for each role, you're just harming your chances of standing out and getting shortlisted for interviews. So the more specific you can be about the work you have done,
Yeah.
the tools that you know, how you have achieved your key results at work, be very specific about them, right? Don't be broad. So I think that is important. Then here, as I was talking earlier, Saiti, the more you can call out your achievements, the better. We'll also, see that over here, like when we talk about the experience section. But if you can call out the top achievements right away, I think that creates
Right.
very powerful impact, right? Um, then, yes, core competencies or skills. This helps from a keyword alignment perspective and definitely from an ATS friendliness perspective. So, I think most people do include this section today, which I'm happy to see. The only thing is sometimes people don't customize it for the JD, right? So, you and I
Yeah.
were talking about this earlier, Saiti, how to customize each resume, right?
Yeah.
And one of the main sections that you do need to customize is the core competencies or skills section. That doesn't mean you rewrite it from scratch for every single JD, but let's say there is probably 60-70% uniformity across the JDs, but maybe there's 20-30% difference in terms of skill requirements for every JD. So
Right.
those are the 20-30%, and it's not that you just blindly match whatever is in the JD, because sometimes you might not have that skill, and I would not ever encourage anybody to write a skill down on their resume which they don't possess or they
Yeah.
don't have.
Absolutely.
But yeah, out of those 20-30% different skills, you might have, let's say, 10% of them which you have not
Yeah.
highlighted, right? So definitely customize for that, right? So that's a key area of customization. um, After that, we get into the professional experience or work experience section. You can see that we keep the name, the location, and the dates right up here. Sometimes people miss out on these details, like the dates
Yeah.
or the location. I think it's important that you put them down. Even if you are changing locations or you're for a remote role, I personally, I think it is important that you put it down, because companies are going to look for it. ATS is going to look for it, and it's just an essential part. But more importantly, it's this section which carries a lot of the weight on whether you're going to get shortlisted or not, right?
Right.
So people obviously write the position title, but this is a part which many people don't write, which is how do you summarize some of the key facets about that role. So we don't generally recommend that you write a very long paragraph here, but something which showcases the most important aspects of that role. Like, for example, if you are a sales professional, the most important thing that you are probably being judged on is the revenue growth that you led, right? If you are an engineer, probably what kind of products you rolled out or what was the quality of the code. You know, if you are, let's say a finance professional, it's probably going to be about like, how did you maintain the books of the company and how did you drive the finances of the company. So whatever your role carries as the most important responsibility, if you can highlight those aspects and highlight maybe one achievement that really is sort of the feather in your hat, so to
Right.
speak, right? that
Yeah.
that would be very essential. We have discussed this, so I'm not going to dive deep into this unless I think you think there's anything we should call out from bullet points perspective here. Do
Yeah.
you think there's something to talk about here?
I think I have one question in case of people who are actually applying to a job which is located in a different place than their current location. Do you suggest them to mention that in the summary? Do you think that is a good idea to mention that they're looking for a target role in XYZ location, which might be reflecting as a separate city than the
Mhm.
current cities that they're in? Do you
Yeah,
encourage
I would
that?
say if you are relocating, it's a good point. I would mention it probably in the profile summary,
Yeah.
or if you are reaching out, and we'll talk about this in the next part of our conversation. If you're reaching out to people at that company, then definitely do that as well.
Yeah.
A lot of times, though, it is sort of understood that if you've applied to a job, that you are open to relocating to that particular location. Otherwise, why would you apply to that job?
Right.
Unless you just missed seeing the location, right?
Right.
So it's not extremely critical, I would say, that you have to
Right.
write it. Is assume that you're okay with working in the location that you've applied for.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds good. I think should we move to the next section, or do you have any other points that we should cover before we move?
Yeah, no, I think if people can, go through this template, and we are happy to share it with folks who might need it later.
Yeah.
I think that's definitely there. And apart from that, obviously your education is something that you can note down. Everybody knows how to do that. One of the things which is not put down here specifically, but in some of the templates that we have, we do ask people to note down their key achievements or leadership examples uh, during their education time frame,
Yeah.
especially if you're an early career professional, right? If you're somebody more than, like, let's say 7 8 years of experience, not that critical. But if you're somebody with less than 5 years experience, I think it would help if you showcase some leadership themes during your educational time frame as well. And obviously, if you have, I mean, this section is just summarized at a high level here, but what we have seen is, while certifications are not just sufficient to get you a job or an interview on its own, but it does leave an impact in the recruiter or hiring manager's mind that this person is investing in themselves, right? And even though we may not be able to measure the impact of that in the outcomes, I can say this with high level of confidence that if you compare resumes which have zero certifications and versus resumes that have certain certifications and everything else is the same, the person with more certifications will have a slight upper hand, right? So that does mean, like, if you have done certifications, highlight them and talk maybe like how you have utilized whatever you learned in that particular certification at work in maybe just one sentence if you can. Otherwise, just highlight the certification and link it to the digital certificate that you must have received post completion, so that you have a credibility in that particular area. Yeah.
Right. So, do you suggest applicants to actually include a link to let's say a prominent certificate that they've actually um, achieved?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Exactly.
that's a good
Like a
point.
hyperlink to that digital
Hyperlink to it.
certificate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a very good point. That adds another layer of credibility to your entire application.
Exactly. And I think the other thing is, if you are sometimes, let's say, transitioning careers, we have a whole different template for that, right?
Yeah,
Which again, we don't have a lot of time to get into. But one of the things that I would talk about when you're changing careers is, if you don't have experience in the target role, right? Because you're changing careers, so you just don't have that much experience. So what you have to focus on in that kind of a resume is, one, in your work experience section, break out the section based on skill themes, right? So rather than talking about, like, let's just maybe quickly go here. So, like, rather than talking about this summary,
yeah,
what you can do instead is talk about, let's say, a skill that is being required for your target role. So, like, let's say if you're targeting a, product management role, so
yeah,
then, talk about like how you have done stakeholder management in a different role, perhaps, right? How you have done cross-functional collaboration, how you have done customer interviews,
yeah,
those kind of things. So whatever is overlapping with your target role, call out that skill at the top, and then put in supporting bullet points for each of those skill topics or skill themes, right? That's
correct.
what I would suggest. And the other thing I would also suggest is, if you have, like, for example, for your career change, you have taken a certification where you did a capstone project, or you worked with a startup as a volunteer, and you have some early experience through that. So put down a section in your resume which highlights those projects and those early experiences as well, which may not be mainstream work experiences. So you might feel a little shy to include them, but you
Right.
can create a separate section which calls out these, differentiated projects or experiences that you have had. So I just wanted to add that, because I know we get about like 40% of
Yeah,
clients who transition from one domain or industry to another.
yeah, that's a good point. Do you suggest that to be a separate section, and what may a applicant actually call it? Something that maybe
Let me try
skills?
and share that. I have it open, Saiti. Let me see
Right.
if I can just quickly share that 1 second.
And meanwhile, to everyone who's joining us now, for this session, please leave your questions in the comments. We'll actually take them, I think, towards the end. The last 10 minutes of this session will be for all the questions that are, around resumes and cold messages. So please leave your questions in the comments.
Yeah. I think, I hope people can see this new
Yeah,
template that I'm sharing. So, this resume is more attuned for a career change
yeah,
professional, so person who's changing the domain or industry. And you can see, right, especially in the work experience section,
yeah.
you can see like it's classified based on the skill
Based
set
on the skill
that you
set,
have,
yeah.
right?
This is
Now,
such a impactful way of actually doing it. It shows the different skills and how you've actually achieved exactly those.
right, right, exactly. And to be very honest, I think recruiters are almost aware at this stage that
Yeah.
a lot of career change professionals will be breaking down their resume like this, right? Because
Hmm.
otherwise, if they don't, and if they just do it normally, like just saying, "Oh, I've worked in a marketing role when I'm trying to transition to product management," they'll automatically reject you, right?
Yeah.
Most
Okay.
of the times. So if you break it down, rather than just saying, "Oh, I've worked as a marketing professional," you call out the overlapping skills and showcase supporting experiences and achievements to those skills. Then I think you have a better chance. At
Yeah.
least we've seen that with our clients. So yeah.
Yeah.
This does not have excuse me, this does not have that separate section that we talked about with regard to projects. But I mean, I'm sure we have a template that covers that separately.
Sure.
um if you do have aligned like projects that are aligned with the target company's skill and experience requirements, definitely call that out. What you can do is, like, instead of, for example, this volunteer experience, you can just put the name of that project, or the internship or part-time experience here, and write 2 to 3 bullet points at most,
Right.
uh, highlighting what you learned, what you did, what you achieved in that particular project. Yeah.
That's great. I think this will be really helpful for anyone who's, who's had at least 10 years of experience or more, or and who's like transitioning. It's very important to club your skills into a single section, probably like different sections. Club those different pointers that you've actually done towards gaining those skills,
Yeah.
so that it's readable for the recruiter as well.
Yep. Absolutely. I think maybe we can move on to the
Yeah.
next part of the conversation,
Yeah,
Saiti.
let's do that. I think a lot of applicants that we've also spoken to, and this is in general for a lot of applicants out there. Applicants do try to network. They do try to reach out to recruiters or within their adjacent networks for for intros, for referrals. They cold message, but they never hear back. And we want to kind of cover in this section some small things that you can actually do, some tools that you can practically use to get more responses on your cold messages. So Arjun, what do you think? Let's break it down again. What are the key elements that candidates are doing wrong, and
Yeah.
how do we help them? How can they actually make that different? How can they do it differently?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this has become a huge need of the hour,
Yeah,
given again how crowded most of the job portals are, like LinkedIn, Naukri, IM Jobs. You know, even some of the industry specific job boards that used to be more niche, like 3, 4 years ago, have become pretty crowded. So if you're just going to depend on portals today, chances are you're not going to hear back for a long time. I'm
yeah,
not saying that it's impossible. Like they do work well in certain scenarios, but for more and more people, I would say at least for 70, 75% of people, it's just depending on job boards can result in 6 months plus kind of a job search, right? Which is very protracted, very, very delayed. So if you want, faster outcomes and a stronger success rate to get more interviews, I think networking and cold outreach, or even warm intros. We'll talk more about that. I think these are very, very helpful in today's world.
hmm,
Um, Now, yeah, I mean, coming to your questions, I think what are the key factors of success? So I'll try to break it down into four different parts, which is um, who, how, when, and what. Okay. So the first thing that we should think about before we just jump into writing cold messages and just sending it out, I think, is who should we reach out to, right?
yeah,
Because a lot of the other factors are determined based on the person you're reaching out to. So the best people to reach out to are not your family or friends necessarily, are not um, your ex colleagues necessarily. It's the people, and not definitely not recruiters. Please don't reach out to recruiters. They are bombarded with these messages. They will
yeah,
99% of the times not respond to you, right? Maybe not even see your message.
yeah,
So the best people to reach out to are the people who are working in your target role. That's one of the most important things, that they should be working in your target role. In some ways they should be either let's say the hiring manager, hiring team member. If not, that's okay. They could be a peer to you, working at your target company. And then the other thing I would say is they should be working at your target company, right? Like
yeah,
ideally you reach out to the people to get a referral or to understand if you're a good fit for a role at that company. So the people who are working at your target companies, your target industry, in your target role, those are the ideal ones to reach out to. And in that, generally I would say a person who has greater decision making power
yeah,
is a better person to reach out to, because if you have, let's say, equal impact on a person, right? Like let's say you reach out to a junior person, a mid-level person, and a senior person. Now let's say your messages are good enough for all three of them, but you'll see a better outcome if that person is more senior. Why? Because that person isn't in a decision making power.
yeah, Yeah.
So it can't be like a very senior person also, because they'll likely not be checking their LinkedIn or emails that much. But you want to make sure you're reaching out to the right person in the right role, industry, company, and level. So generally we recommend, like, for each role, reach out to at least two people, up to three people, right? And
Right.
apart from that, the right people to reach out to are your closest professional and personal network. Do reach out to them as well. And for them, you actually, because they know you, they trust you, you don't really have to spend a lot of time kind of convincing them or
Yeah.
building trust. They already know you.
Yeah.
So you definitely should reach out to them to say that, hey, I'm looking for a new role, and this is what I'm looking for. Be very specific in that outreach, and we'll again talk about the when and how and what. But that outreach is much simpler than the initial outreach that I talked about, right? Because that's sort of a one size fit all, where you have to make sure people understand how to help you. If they don't know how to help you, it'll be hard.
Yeah.
So those are the two types of people to reach out to, right? Now let's talk about the how. How is like basically the platform or the channel that you use to reach out to these people. Um, if we are talking about the hiring managers or the people who are working at your target company, LinkedIn is the most common and obvious way to reach out. And one thing to keep in mind is people are very active on LinkedIn today,
Yeah.
especially post COVID. There's been an increase in both volume and activity.
Yeah.
So definitely, if you're not on LinkedIn, please become more active on LinkedIn. And I would say the other way to reach out is finding email. So there are certain free email finder tools. So if, let's say, you're targeting a role at a fast growing startup, and you see that there are very few people and they're not very active on LinkedIn, right? That's one of the reasons, by the way, why you might want to reach out to somebody on email, because they're not looking very active on LinkedIn. You can see the LinkedIn activity, and maybe there's zero actions from them
Yeah.
over the last 90 days. That means if you send them a message on LinkedIn, likely it's going into a vacuum and nobody's going to look at it. So in those cases, you may want to reach out on email. And there is a tool which I think is called snov.io, snov.io.
Okay.
But that's one of the hundreds of tools
Right.
that are available. You just have to go there, type in the name of the person you want to reach out to and the company name, right? If you do that, you'll get their email ID, and you'll get, I think you get at least up to 50 or 100 free email IDs. After that, you might have to pay. So you can think about using this a little more judiciously, right? Don't send emails to everybody, only to the people who are not active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I think those are the two best channels for people who you don't really know that well. If you know people who are within your network and you're reaching out to them, then obviously whatever you think is the most appropriate channel, whether it's WhatsApp or SMS or email or whatever you think is the easiest way to reach out to them, that is fine. The next thing is when, right? So this is, I would say, one of the most underrated aspect of outreach, right? Because
Yeah.
people just reach out based on their bandwidth. A lot of them are reaching out at like 1 a.m. in the morning. One of the worst times to reach out is you reach out, between like 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Because a lot of times people are inactive. When they come to LinkedIn, they might have other notifications tagged on top
Yeah.
of yours. Yours might get buried. So you don't want to reach out during these times. It also doesn't reflect well if you're sending messages really late at night, like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Doesn't reflect well, especially if you're reaching out to a stranger.
Yeah.
Um, so generally, you want to reach out during work hours, or I would say the early morning hours are the best ones. Like 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. is the highest likelihood. But also, like, sometimes post lunch is a good time because people
Yeah.
check their messages a lot of times after lunch. The other thing which is very critical is how you follow up. So when we talk about this when factor,
Yeah.
it's not just about the initial outreach. It's very much also about when you follow up with them. So a lot of times people don't follow up, which is, I would say, just like leaving money on the table, basically.
Yeah.
If you can reach out, I would say at least two more times after your initial outreach, so two follow-ups, I think that's a sweet spot. Sometimes you might want to persist. We have actually heard, there are times when people have gotten jobs or funding from an investor after following up for over 12, 13 times. So there's actually a very popular case study on this recently that happened on LinkedIn. I don't know, Saiti, if you saw this, but there's I'm forgetting the name of the CEO. There's a CEO based in San Francisco,
Hmm.
in Silicon Valley, who recently raised a significant amount of money. And one of the investors was, this podcast, Diary of a CEO,
Yeah.
Stephen Bartlett, I think.
Yeah.
So he is a major influencer in the media and content creation space today. And this company is also in, building something for influencers and content creators. So they reached out to Stephen Bartlett more than, I think, 15 times, and he
Okay.
ultimately gave them an investment, right? Obviously it's a different context because it's more like founder VC kind of
Yeah.
a outreach, but the same thing sometimes can actually work if you have a dream company or a dream job and you're reaching out with very effective messaging
Yeah.
during the course of that outreach. So follow-ups have a lot of power, and I would say don't really give up unless and until you're just not very passionate about that particular job, right? If you're not passionate, you might not want to waste your time and energies. But if you are, then I would say keep following up with updates, with new information. If you just keep saying the same thing over and over, people are not going to respond differently. But if you have significantly new updates, like you've added a new skill to your portfolio, if you've worked on a major project that resulted in brilliant outcomes, if you have changed your goal in any way which now aligns better with the company, so whatever, if you have an update, definitely follow up,
Yeah.
even more than 3 times, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the when part. And the last part, which is the what. So generally I would say if it's a person you don't really know that well, it's better that you don't ask for a job referral or some major help right away, because you're still establishing your relationship, your trust with them.
Yeah.
And strangers don't always, they're not very forthcoming in helping strangers right away, because not because they're not good people or they're not helpful. It's just that everybody is busy, right? Like
Yeah.
you're busy, I'm busy, we are all focusing on things in our lives. So that's very important that you sort of establish trust
Yeah.
by,
Connect. Yeah.
yeah, by highlighting common areas of overlapping interests,
Yeah.
right? Or talking about something you saw on their profile which really piqued your interest and you want to learn more about that, right? So I think those are the type of conversation starters that really help in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then if they respond, and I mean, with that, obviously you can't expect 100% or even a 50% response rate, but even if you get, let's say, 10-20% response rate, that's very good, because the average market response rate on cold outreach is less than 5%. You can Google it, you can find surveys which will tell you the same statistic, right? So if you're at a 10 to 20% range, that's 2 to 4 times the average market response rate, which is great. And I do feel like if you highlight common areas of interest as opposed to asking for help from strangers, that does get you to that. If you know the person well, or if you have, like, reached to a level with a stranger now, they have responded to you, you've had a chat with them, they know you at a certain level, then I think you can be more targeted in your ask, where you can, not just be very transactional, say, hey, now that we know each other, please help me get a job, but be very deliberate and mindful, thoughtful about how you ask for that help,
Yeah.
right? So be firstly very grateful that, they have been able to consider you or give you the time to consider you for that role. But then, like, let's say if you're asking for a referral, talk about why you think you're the right fit, right? Be very pointed in highlighting those areas of alignment with the target job. And I would say that the best candidates, they are the ones who actually spend some time figuring out those areas of alignment, because actually it will help you not just in your referral request, it will also help you later when you are interviewing potentially with the
Yeah.
company. So yeah, I would say, we have a few templates, we can go over those.
Yeah, let's do that. In the interest of time, I think it'll be great to actually cover at least one or two templates if we can, and then we'll. I think we have one question to cover
Yeah.
after that.
So I'll cover two templates very quickly, Saiti.
Oh, sure.
Let me know when you see my screen. So this first one is for people who you don't really know that well.
Okay.
Actually, our pivot portal. So in
Yeah.
case people don't know, we have a portal that, provides a lot of tools and resources to help you search for or land your target role. So for that, we have a couple of these different templates. One of them, which is this one. So if you click on this request for a quick chat, you'll see that this is separated into three different paragraphs. The first one is more focused on establishing like why you're reaching out to them. So you talk about like, I saw a recent project or a thing that you have worked on your LinkedIn profile, or based on company research that you might have done.
Yeah.
um, right, second thing, you talk more about like, this is what I am hoping to do in my career, not necessarily just from a job search perspective, but these are what my broader career goals are and how they overlap with that person's area of expertise. And then the third one is just asking for either a quick call or asking them specific questions to get their feedback, right? So I think it's a very simple, very straightforward kind of a template, and I would say that the simpler you keep it, the more effective it can be,
Yeah.
right? So this is for people you don't know. I'll just quickly share another template um, for people who you do know. Actually, it's in the same portal. So now that's, let's say you know the person, right? Here you have established trust. You can ask for help right away if you're looking for a job referral. And this is very cut to the chase kind of a template. There are others which are slightly more long, but here you can see, I'm writing about this role at this company, and this is why I think I'm a great fit. You give 3 4 bullet points that highlight very specifically why you feel you're the right person. So you highlight, for example, your experience in those in demand skills or in demand functions. You talk about the achievements, um, and then you just wrap it up with a, like, let me know if you need anything else, and that's pretty much it. So these, I would say, are quite effective. There's one template that I got my hands on. I want to just showcase that because that's actually something that has been used by someone within our network.
Okay.
uh,
And for everyone who's not looked at the templates or the planner that Arjun just shared, it is available for a free use. We have a free trial of that, and you
yeah.
can sign up and access that. And feel free to check it out. At the link will be in our comments.
All right, I hope you can see this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So this is person who sent out an email to this company Upstocks, and this is something that actually worked for this person, right? Like, it actually helped them get the job. Now, we won't have the time to go over each and everything in this,
Yeah.
but this person starts off by congratulating Upstocks because he has been a user. So he talks about what he likes about that app, which establishes very strong connect with the recruiter or the hiring manager, because they like the fact that you've been a customer. If you're not a customer, at least you should have deep understanding of the product at some level. He's, for example, even highlighted, there are a few bugs on the iOS, but I'm still a net promoter. So it shows that this person knows what he's talking about with regard to that particular app. um, the other thing that this person has done here is really talked in detail about like what they have focused on in their career and how it aligns with the role that they are targeting.
Yeah.
And it's a very custom outreach kind of a message. It's not very generic,
Yeah.
one size fit all. So
Definitely.
yeah, I think if you showcase that passion and authenticity, it can really work wonders, as opposed to just using AI generated messages, which can be sometimes very generic and one size fit all.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is. I think if the applicant actually targets specifically focuses on this part where they showcase what impact they've actually shown,
Yeah,
what impact they've achieved in their previous organization, and they can actually exemplify that, show examples of it. I think that actually helps a lot. And then not making it very cookie cutter and generic, like using an AI tool and the templatized format really helps. I think that is the thing that really shines through. It is very authentic and very simple in
yeah.
language.
Passion you can show, right?
Yeah.
I do feel supported by actual work and
Actual work.
achievements. I think that really works well. A lot of times people write very, like we are saying again and again, it's like very, very generic stuff. It's like, I would love to be part of this company, and they don't really highlight why would you love to be
Why?
part of this
Yeah.
company, right?
Yeah.
And this person has talked about that because he is an avid investor, right? Very passionate investor, and Upstocks is a product he has used. Now, if that may not be true for every company or every product out there, and that's okay, but you still need to showcase your enthusiasm for
Yeah.
that role in a very genuine and authentic manner.
Show how you actually like how it is designed, or like how it is built, or like some part of what the
Yeah.
company actually stands for,
Yeah,
so
and
that can help
sometimes, like, if
people
it's an
say,
early stage startup or something where they have not even created a product or an impactful product yet,
yeah,
you can even talk about like how you're really excited about the problem they're trying to solve,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
So there's always a way to show your passion for that particular company
Yeah,
that differentiates you from the other candidates.
absolutely. I think that is very important to actually showcase when you're reaching out to somebody. um, you know
Yeah.
it might not necessarily be for a job, but reaching out to someone so that you create an impact um, for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Saiti, overall, I would say is go after quality,
Yeah,
not quantity, and don't treat people like they are doormats who are just trying to, help you get to the next role. They are
yeah,
real people. They have their own challenges and goals in life. So think about when you're doing your networking, how would you want to be reached out to if somebody reached out to, and um, what would make you respond to a person,
yeah,
right? Who you
absolutely.
don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is very important to consider when people are reaching out to through cold messages to anyone they don't know necessarily well or know at all. It's somebody new that you're approaching, so be mindful of that. You know, probably have follow one of these templates if you need help with that, and yeah, hopefully this will actually help in people achieving more success in getting replies when outreaching. We have one question that I quickly want to cover. We are over the time, but somebody has asked, is it required to add academic record or languages? So one part is academic record, the other part is languages known in resumes for someone with greater than 10 years of experience. How relevant are these from recruiters' point of view? Now, languages may be programming languages, but I think this is like spoken languages. But I
Yeah.
may be wrong. But we can cover both in this case.
Yeah, best to be safe.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think the answer for the first one is clear yes,
yeah,
and you need to show your academic record even if you have more than 10 years of experience. It's just best practice. Recruiters and hiring managers are interested in knowing about your educational pedigree.
yeah,
I mean, a lot of times people, unfortunately or fortunately, they get a job because they are associated with some of the top schools in the world, right? Like
yeah,
if you are a Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, IIM graduate, a lot of times that will open doors for you because of the
yeah.
strength of that particular school. So yeah, I mean, academic records are a must. I mean, when you say record, if you're saying like showcasing your coursework or the type of classes you've taken or subjects you've studied, no, not
Not that.
necessarily.
Yeah,
Apart from what you have majored in or what your honors was, right? So the degree that you have, like, you need to highlight that. With regard to the languages, I think it's a little more of a gray area in my view. I think if you are working in a role where knowing a specific language is going to make a difference, like for example, you're working with international audience where different languages are spoken in your role, then yeah, definitely. Sometimes, for example, you might be applying to many AI jobs today where you're doing AI labeling. So a lot of jobs today are for AI labels, and when you are doing that job, actually, um, you do sometimes need to know different languages because
yeah.
building labels in multiple languages, right? So yeah, if
Or
your job requires
yeah.
knowledge. Yeah, Saiti, you were saying something.
Sorry, I just want to add that there might be people who are also in another country where English is not spoken, like in English is a second language. Maybe in that case, they can add that language.
Yeah,
not necessarily in
absolutely.
India, but some other place. So depends on the
Yeah,
context, right?
no, absolutely. But I think if language is not a strong requirement, like language is not a skill, but like it's just a way of communication, then
Yeah,
I don't think you typically need to highlight that
true,
in
fair
most
point.
cases.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. If language is a skill that's needed for the job, then I think it's worth pointing it out for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah,
And in the case that Saiti you pointed out as well.
yeah. One thing I would like to add is we've seen a couple of times when in resumes with people who have 10 or more than 10, 15, 20 years of experience, they tend to not write the year in which they've graduated. What do you say about that?
You mean basically the timeline of their
The
education?
timeline of their education. Do you always recommend that be written?
That's a good question. I mean, most of the times we do see it in resumes. I don't think people can hide it one way or the other
Yeah,
if they want to. I know sometimes people do try to hide it because they don't want to showcase, maybe because they are fearing ageism or something else.
yeah,
That is true. But I mean, I think recruiters and hiring managers are smart enough to know at a high level because if you don't have it there, they will just look at your work experience
yeah.
timelines and do the math, right, accordingly.
So one should actually mention that here
I
as well.
don't see it as an something to hide for
Yeah.
anybody, to be
Okay.
honest.
Yeah. All right. I think maybe that's something that is more common on LinkedIn, where people don't mention necessarily the year that they've graduated.
Yeah.
Seen a couple of
So,
times.
I have a pretty simple ground rule when it comes to any of the job application materials.
Yeah.
Be honest.
Yeah. Exactly.
Just be honest and transparent as much
Yeah.
as possible. You might feel that, yes, you're facing biases, and I completely sympathize with people who are facing biases
Yeah.
one way or the other. Um, but I think if you try to hide some of the basic details which are required, like education and work experience related details are needed, right? That's
Yeah.
just
Absolutely.
absolutely
Yeah.
needed. Anything else like your like whether you are married or single, how many kids you have or date of birth and all those things, those are not needed. And by the way, in India there are many people who still
Yeah.
include that
That's a fair
information in their
point.
resume.
I think that needs to be talked out a little bit more. That personal details like marital status, you know, date of
Date
birth
of birth, yeah.
doesn't need to be included in your resume. Keep it very professional.
Yeah, and please don't give out your full address. I've seen a
Yeah,
lot of people giving out their full address. I think if you've just given your city or state is good enough.
right.
Giving your house address is not needed at all. So please don't do that.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we've also seen is like mentioning LinkedIn profile and for developers like GitHub links is very
Yeah.
helpful too.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah, that's a very good point, Saiti. Thanks for bringing it up. I think depending on whichever role you are in,
Yeah,
if you have a portfolio to showcase,
yeah,
definitely include a link for that portfolio in your resume. So, like Saiti said, for developers, it's your Git profile. For data professionals, it could be like something you've done on Kaggle. Designers, it could be something on Behance or
yeah,
Dribble, right? So, depending on whoever you are, like in which role you are, if you have a portfolio anywhere, right, please share a link for that. Chances are it's going to only help your application.
right. So to circle back on this question, it seems relevant to add academic record, but not really relevant and depends on the context about the languages.
Yeah, exactly. Like we said, right? Like I think
Yeah,
language, if it's a skill, I think it definitely can help. Or if it's a medium of communication in the country that you're
in
targeting,
that
like let's say
country.
you're targeting Germany
Yeah,
as your next country of work experience, then you're currently in India. If you know German, please put it there for
yeah,
sure, right? And by the way, with regard to international transitions, which we do help with, we have helped people get placed into US, UK, some of the other Western European countries, and UAE and Singapore. So many times you should put your language skills as well as your work permit status for these countries right up front,
yeah,
right at the top. Not even like if you know German language and you have a work permit for Germany, you should put that under your name at the top, right?
Because it affects your, your being picked up. Uh, it affects your application at the end.
Yeah, exactly. Um, Otherwise, there's a good chance you might get auto rejected if they feel like you don't know German or that
Yeah,
you don't have authority to work in Germany.
yeah.
You might get automatically rejected.
Fair point. I think that's a good thing to remember
Yeah.
to do.
Last thing that I want to say is we have come across people who have had certain career gaps or work gaps, and we frequently get asked, should I how should I handle that in my resume, right? So, see, if it's less than I would say 2 month gap, like if it's 2 months or less, you don't really need to call it out because I think companies understand that there could be many reasons why you have a short gap in your career.
Yeah,
But if you have over 2, 3 months kind of a gap, I won't say it's like blanket rule. Like I won't
yeah,
say everybody should do it, but in most cases, I think it's important that you have a section in your work experience section where you talk about that gap, career gap, and you don't want to draw too much attention to it,
yeah,
but again, in the spirit of being honest and transparent, if you can talk about the key reason you took the gap and what you did professionally during that gap, right? Sometimes people also say, it was to focus on my health or taking care of a loved one or something like that. I think that's also okay. So that would basically showcase that that's your reason. And
yeah,
then if you've done something like, some professional upskilling during that time frame, you've done a small project, you've created content or whatever you've done, if you can highlight maybe 2 3 things in a very concise manner, that can be very powerful. Because I'll tell you why, that question is anyways going to come up at some point.
yeah,
Either you're going to get rejected for that gap, in which case you never stood a chance to begin with. Um, if the company is fair and they want to give you a fair shot despite the gap, then they will ask you, what did you do during this gap, why did you take that gap? So you might as well cover that in your resume.
yeah. That's very important to know.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, I think I know we have spent a few extra minutes there. There's just so much to discuss once you get
There
into
is a
it.
lot to discuss, and I think we've covered very important small, points that often get overlooked. I think so. Whoever's joined us, hopefully, will find this really helpful. And to actually, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. We can actually help you out after this session ends. I think our team will try to work that out, and you can always check out mypivot.work, sign up for the free trial, and check us out there. And if you have any questions, you can also schedule a free career call. You'll find the details in the website. All right, I just wanted to, wrap that up with saying thanks, Arjun, for actually really deep diving into a lot of the different sections. We actually looked at templates, and we actually looked at real resumes, real messages that can actually give so many insights into how people actually can structure their messages, structure their resumes. Anything you want to leave the users who are with us with?
Yeah, no, I think we have covered a lot about the topic at hand today.
Yeah,
And these are very important factors of consideration, especially I would say networking and referrals. So, meaning your cold outreach has become much more important than it used to be. But I would also add that there are certain other factors which may be resulting in, you know, um, the job search outcomes that you're experiencing outside of the resume and cold outreach. So, do make
yeah,
sure you're looking into those. Like, for example, if you're applying to too many jobs without customizing your resume, that could backfire. If you're applying to too few jobs, you may not give yourself enough opportunity to hear back from companies. Um, the quality of jobs or the alignment of jobs with your profile that you're shortlisting, I think that also matters.
yeah,
So there are a couple of other your LinkedIn, etc. I mean, there are a couple of other factors in addition to what
yeah.
we have discussed.
Definitely, definitely. Um, yeah, there are so many factors. I think alignment to the role and diversifying, like basically applying to more number of roles, and customizing to that role is something that needs more talking about, and probably in another session we'll cover more of that as well.
Yes. I had fun, Saidi. Thanks for structuring it so well. And I hope it was helpful for folks who joined us.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thanks, Arjun. Have a great day.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.